Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 495. We tackle I Am Bane. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge. I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot segulin, the Duke of and the elder statesman of the podcast.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode, we are going to be cover to cover tackling Batman's issues 16 to 20, as we're going to be discussing the I Am Bane story arc, issue by issue. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, and the InfiniteComics.com podcast partnership. Mr. Segulin, we are sponsored this episode, of course, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Can you please tell us what is going on over at DCBService.com?
Well, first off, as always, DCBS continues their support with some great bundle packages. All of the bundles, 50% off, including, we've got the Vertigo, we've got Young Animals, we've got some of the collected limited stories they've got going on. You name it, they're picking the different titles, putting them in these great bundles. Look through them, see which ones you want, but 50% off. But you know what else is 50% off, Sean?
What?
Batman Rebirth Deluxe Collected hardcover book number 1. It covers Batman Rebirth number 1 and Batman 1 through 15. A nice collected edition, hardcover deluxe edition. Outstanding. So right there, you want the lead into the stories that we're talking about, right there collected in a beautiful hardcover, but it's 50% off. Only $17.49 for 16 issues. How can you beat that? Thank you, DCBS.
Yeah, see, that's a difference for me between getting it and not getting it. When it's that price point, I'm like, it's a hardcover, and these are stories I love. So that does pull me right into grabbing that. I do want to remind everyone they're a digital partner. Whether you do Comixology or My Digital Comics, if you go to their site, you link your accounts, you earn 5% of those purchases towards your DCB service order. It doesn't cost you anything more. The only catch is please make sure to go to their site and use their portal. If you go to dcbservice.com and you click on their portal, and we have links in the show notes on every episode. We also have links up on our webpage. If you click on that, right from the drop-down, go to Comixology from there. Anytime you make a purchase, they get a portion of that purchase, and you get a portion of that back towards your DCB service order. So make sure to use that portal for shopping. Then however you open them up on, whether you do it from an app or you do it from a browser, doesn't matter. It just goes into your Comixology account. So it doesn't cost you anything more. It does help our show sponsor, so please consider helping them out that way. Over at InStockTrades.com, there's so many cool things over here. It's great. They have Flintstones and the Jetsons, trade paperback volume 1, 42% off, only $7.53 that just came out. Wonder Woman trade paperback volume 2, that's one of the year 1 trade paperbacks that are out there. It's 42% off, only $9.85. They have this one. I'm a big fan of Tarzan and Planet of the Apes. This isn't DC, but Tarzan on Planet of the Apes trade paperback is 42% off, only $11.59. Batman, speaking of omnibuses, Batman Nightfall Omnibus Hardcover Volume 1, 42% off, only $57.99. I go over to their site a lot of times because I try to keep up on things. I'm a Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't have a big history with Marvel's monsters. I read the ones that were in Marvel Team Up, but this is one I'm interested in. This is one of the new releases. It's Deal of the Week. Monsters Hardcover Volume 1. It's a Marvel Monsterbus. It's the Lee, Lieber, and Kirby stuff. 50% off, only $50. So an omnibus, and it's got Groot right on the cover, which I don't know Groot's history in comics. I remember Groot vaguely, and I read a lot of Marvel. I know we do a DC cast, but throughout my life, I was just as much of a Spider-Man fan as I was a Batman fan. And then when I fell in love with the X-Men, I was reading just as much Marvel as I was reading DC. But there's certain characters, there were certain DC characters that I didn't read as much. And the monsters were one of them. One of the groups, I should say, of characters. And Groot, I had no hit. Other than I was familiar that if you'd said to me in a trivia contest, what comic company is Groot from, I could have said it was Marvel. But that would have been the extent of it. I would have been able to pull that one out of the hat. So I'm interested in this just because this is material I wouldn't have read at all. So I like that about collected editions. It's a good way to be able to grab classic material that I haven't read before, or even contemporary material, because you mentioned a lot of on this episode, a lot of Marvel stuff you've been reading. So thank you, DCB Service and InStockTrades.com, for providing discounts to that. Mr. Seglin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing in today's show. So if you ever read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk some comics.
Nothing like the handy-dandy electro-claw for carving through metal doors.
Our initial discussion will be on Batman number 16. It's part one of the I Am Bane story. It's written by Tom King with pencils by David Finch, inks by Jordi Belair, with colors by John Workman, letters by Finch, Danny Wicki, and Jordan Belair on the covers. Tim Sale and Brennan Wagner as variant cover.
And this storyline, it's historically on the show, we've done storylines periodically, just favorite storylines on the show. And we haven't been able to do that in quite a while. So it was kind of fun as we were playing catch-up to kind of take a look at some of our storylines that have been coming across. So we're actually doing a 2-part Batman episode. This first part's going to be the I Am Bane storyline. The next episode is going to feature the Button. So we're going to do the complete Button storyline too, and talk cover to cover about it and what we enjoyed. This storyline is near and dear to me because I'm a big Bane fan. Batman's enjoyed in recent years. Well, I say recent years, man, Bane was the 80s. It's really not. But when you take a look at, I think, some of comic book heroes in general, their best villains tend to be the ones that were originally created in their initial 10 years, maybe. And they tend to be the ones that happen over and over again. Other people wind up gradually becoming thug number 2. But in the case of Batman in recent years, you've had Bane, was created in the 80s. Then you had characters like Hush come on the scene. Then you've had the Court of Owls and things like that being created. So these are characters that I think, have been shown to add something to the mythos and have longevity. Bane's been one of those interesting characters where sometimes he's handled extremely well, where you're just blown away the way you were with his initial appearance, and other times he's somehow watered down and not quite the same character. More often than not, this character's been handled very well, but there's been times where it's been kind of like, really, this is the guy that broke Batman. You got to remember that this, and I think what ends up getting lost with the character a lot of times is his strategic side. The fact that Bane is not just a big brute, he is a planner. And in the case of this one, this storyline brings back into Rebirth characters like Trog, Zombie, and Bird, Bane's gang, who we really haven't seen used in a long time. So it's great to see these characters brought in, not just as background noise, but really in the foreground as a part of Bane's plan. I really enjoyed how this storyline played out and reintroduced them because they were a threat in and of themselves. But man, when they couldn't handle something, all of a sudden the wall cracks and there's the big boy right there ready to go. And for some reason, it made it all the more intimidating when he shows up on the scene because of the fact that our heroes were able to take down his minions, who were clearly powerful. So I liked the way that they were used in this storyline. This is the kind of Bane storyline I want to read. We've seen Tom King do a great job with Bane recently, and I really loved how this wasn't just a done-in-one storyline. Bane is a big event when he comes in, and when he's got his target on you, I love that this storyline with the mask and everything and him trying to gain that back and gain back that power is, Psychopirate is something that he would need, and having his plans taken away from him by Batman, fine. You want to come and mess with my world? Now I'm going to come and mess with yours, which is really what's going on. Bane's coming to take over here. It is worth noting that this series now is leading to Bane having his own 12-issue series, which is going to be done by, I know Chuck Dixon is involved in the writing. And so it's great to see Bane once again, being in the forefront. He's a character he's had 2 big arcs now in the Batman book. He's going to have his own 12-issue series that takes place outside of Gotham. So it's fun to see this character back on the scene again in a big way. And I'm glad that they're writing him so well. Tom King is really hitting a home run with this book. And we've talked a lot about Detective Comics on this show recently. This book in particular is really blowing me away. And I love that it's so different than Detective Comics. Where are you at on the Bat books as a whole? Because we've got the Tom King book, we've got Detective Comics going on, we've also got All-Star Batman. How are you feeling about the Batman books that are out there right now? Do you have a favorite, or do you like the variety of them? What is grabbing you about this right now? And is there anything that's not?
It's okay. Figured I'd give balance, Yeah,
that's fine. I'm a Batman junkie, so you forget that. I got diary. This is my dun dun dun.
yeah. Well, and it's funny because you're the Bat guy, I'm the Superman guy, but I absolutely love Batman, just like you love Superman.
Right.
And this is such a good time to be reading Batman because, as you said, each book has their feel to it, but each one feels like it's part of the same universe. I'm not reading this Batman going, he doesn't fit the detective guy. No, they're all working well together, where they're letting the creative team tell their own story. They're having their own voice and their own take on who Batman is, but this guy is the same as that guy is the same as that one. It's a really solid unit and a solid universe. And as for favorites, it's a tough one. It's kind of hard for me. I think part of me is leaning towards Batman. The title itself is just slightly edging out detective, but even then I can't. I'll be honest with you. You get me a real. As I'm reading a detective story or as I'm reading a detective arc, I'm like, oh man, this is awesome. And so it's whatever's really in front of me is is my favorite title of them. I think though sometimes I think Batman kind of edges, especially with this Bane story and with what's coming up in the Button and all that stuff, and throughout the past the past run of. Batman's always been kind of a lead-in for me. It's always had a slight, just that slight edge. It's kind of like, what's the difference between 100% and 99%? It's just that one little 1%. It's just that little tick that goes up. And I think, guys like Tom King writing really, pull me in because I love his style. I love just the story that's told, because it's never just about the story being told. It's also the story and the visual element. There's a lot of heavy focus on what you're seeing. You got to figure out the story as it plays out, and it's, there's going to be nice little swerves. There's going to be nice little things. And especially this I Am Bane story, first read through, I was like, oh, that was awesome. Second read through, but the ending, I thought it was going to go one way, and it went a different way than I thought it was going to. So, whenever you think a story's going to go A to B and it goes A to C, you're like, wait, what's that? And you got to look. And then, so when I did my reread through, my first read through of the series, I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And you start seeing where this is played out. And then you really go, oh, that's a really cool ending. I like that. I like that better than my ending that I had in my head. So it's one of I love about his writing, where he's going to do things a little bit differently than I thought. But then I'm like, you know what? He's right. I like this way better than what I had in my head.
I like that the writing is layered. And it's everything you're saying. I like that you're thinking he's zigging when he's zagging. And then he zags in a whole different way than you've seen before. I think we're seeing a lot more of, in recent years, of what I've always loved about Batman. Why is Batman my guy? The best writers over the years have done intelligent storylines with the character, where they've made you think they were going to do one thing. Like, let's talk about, Nightfall for a second. Nightfall was a storyline when I originally read it. I thought Bane was the bad guy. And he sort of was, but in the end, it really was Jean-Paul Valley was the guy, or Jean-Paul Valley, however you pronounce it, was really the bad guy of the storyline. It was Azrael. Asbats. That was meant to be the one. But here's where they swerved me with that one, going all the way back in the day. They were showing these posters of Asbats before you knew that that's who it was. And I always thought that, when they were teasing the replacement, that Azrael was going to don the bat suit, the traditional bat suit, but then in the end it was going to be Bruce that came back in that new suit. And the reason why he had to wear that new suit was because his back was broken or something like that. I never really thought back then that I mean, they're going to take Bruce Wayne out of the game? Really? They're going to do this? So that was a storyline that really had such layers to it. Because Bane, you watched him gradually stalking Batman, planning to take him down, and using the breaking the villains out of Arkham Asylum, then his entire gang, to gradually break down Batman, who was already in an exhaustive state. So Batman was already overdoing it, and this was gradually breaking him down. Brilliant storyline. Very smart and very long. This is building off of this I Am Bane storyline. Is building off of a really great run that Batman had with his own Dirty Dozen, his own Suicide Squad, for lack of a better term, in the attempt of what they were trying to do to get the Mask of Psycho Pirate and to take down Bane. I loved the way that storyline played out, and that it didn't just end there. It led to this big storyline where Bane was coming to Gotham, and he was coming heavy. He had finally gone back to Venom now, and we were seeing Bane coming back with a purpose and a plan. Anytime you've got Bane with a plan, and he's not just a thug, this is where storylines go to just an amazing level. And I loved the sense of foreboding in this. This first issue really, when you've got the whole Batman gang, they're in the middle of this action, and it's not just the Robins that are involved in this. You've got Bronze Tiger, you've got Gotham Girl, you've got Catwoman, Commissioner Gordon, the whole gang. One of the balances of this story is the fact that there's so many characters involved in it, but then you still have this moment where they meet at Batburger. In this sequence that seems at first very quaint to Gotham, but gets very dark very fast. Because Batman's basically telling them, you guys have got to stay out of this. This is not something you can win. This is something you've got to take seriously. To the point that Duke seems to listen to him. And that's something that's great. You mentioned rereads, why this story is great to reread. That bit with Duke, where Duke is there, because Duke's a lot of the times a character that I don't want to say I forget about, but because Duke's role is so unique in his relationship with Batman, and he's so new to the game, you're not seeing Duke play out in the way that you do the other Robins in other titles. So when you see him, you're kind of remembering that, oh yeah, he's got this new sidekick in training, and we don't really know what his real role is, because Batman's doing something a little different with him. I like that he listens to sort of listens to Batman, but the same way that the Robins are inspired about him, I like in this storyline we're seeing that happen with Duke as well. Duke is a favorite character of mine. Again, another character I didn't see winding up in the role that he is, but I like that they're not overexposing him. A lot of times when there's a character that's interesting, they start to really overexpose him and throw him in all kinds of different places. I don't know that I need that with Duke right now. I actually like the surprise of Duke when he pops up in this and you're kind of like, oh yeah, Duke. and he becomes a big part of this storyline in a way that seems to matter to this story arc. I think there's something, I don't want to see him in Detective other than as a cameo, the way that they use him. I like the way that they use this character, and he seems to appear more in this title. It just seems to be working for me at the moment. I don't know if you feel the same way, if you want to see more Duke or where you want him to go. It's not that I don't like him. I actually really appreciate the conservative nature of their approach with him.
Well, it's Duke is a character that I do want to see more of just because I like the character so much. Mm-hmm. But I'm not complaining on his usage. Like you, I think they picked their spot with this guy, and they're using him well.
Yes.
Especially throughout this whole with the Gotham Girl story and everything that was playing out with him, just where he's developing his own voice, developing his own style. He's not a Robin. He's his own character. He's his own person. And I like how he keeps that independence. Especially even in this Batburger scene was absolutely wonderful because one, it had these great comedic moments of the three Robins just going at each other, and it's the three brothers. Picking on each other, and Damian gets the Happy Meal. He's like, this is not what I ordered, but of course he wants to keep the toy. It's there's that little monster, that I always love about him, that he's got these kid moments, but he is a hardened assassin. He could do some serious damage, but he's still they're still cracking jokes even, and he's even throwing his own little jabs at them. Like with the receding hairline comment to Jason and everything. And it was just, this really fun moment. But then Bruce is like, hey, Bane. And he, again, as you said, it went from this lighthearted, fun moment to this very serious dialogue of, this is a very dangerous person. He's ordering them out. He's telling them to leave, go on vacation, don't take your mask, or take your mask, just don't do it here. And of course, as you're reading it, the Robins are going to go, yeah, right. Okay. And even Grayson makes the little joke. So we're not listening to what he says, right? And it was just that great kind of, that fun moments. And Duke, I love how you said it, where he looked like he was going to take, Bruce's advice, but I loved how, Dick's like, clever kid. He realized what Duke was doing. That Duke wasn't just leaving. Duke was gonna, but Duke was gonna play it differently, as opposed to how the Robins were gonna play it. But he knew Duke was still gonna be in town. He knew Duke was still gonna be around. I don't know where Duke went to hide to make it look like he left, or he probably completely faked leaving, knowing that someone's maybe watching them, or I don't know. Those are the kind of stuff that I wish we could see what Duke did, what he actually did to make it appear like he left.
Well, can it just be that he didn't don his outfit and just went about his business? I think, with Bruce, it was kind of like lay low, so maybe Duke did that. Because the other three, I'm taking it, it wasn't just that they didn't lay low. I think that they were ready to pounce on Bane when he showed up. I think they were ready to be a part of this battle, and they put themselves into positions where they were a part of Team Batman, just like they normally would be, where, they maybe divided up and were each... I like that we don't know what they were doing, but I would take it when you've got Nightwing and Red Hood and Damian, that the three of them probably are like, hey, you take this, like almost like a triangle. You take this quadrant, I'll take this quadrant, and we stay in contact. Do not attack him alone. Let's all group. And obviously Bane got to them first.
Yeah. Well, Bane knows the secret. It's obvious that Bane knows, Bruce's full-on secret, so he knows their secrets as well. So I'm assuming he knows, Duke's secret, because as you said before, Bane's got their strategery. He knows what he's doing when it comes to facing the Bat. It's not just this brute who goes in and, smacks around people. He's got a plan on how to attack for each individual, each individual member of this team. And again, it's, that he's the dark side of Batman. And it's funny saying the dark side of Batman because he's the dark and brooding hero, but Batman is the hero. He is the guy who doesn't kill. He is the person who's fighting for the innocent, and he's fighting for those who can't protect themselves. Bane has that same level of discipline, but he's the dark. He's the yin to the yang of Batman, and it's one of those things that. Why I really like, this version and this incarnation of Bane is that he is the evil version of Batman, and it's something I like to see.
I would actually make an argument that he's the yin to the yang fully. And let me explain that. Bruce at his best, and I think when writers really understand the character, Batman honed his body and his physicality for the purpose of, becoming a weapon that could defend Gotham. But he also honed his mind. And I do think at the end of the day, when Bruce can't overcome an opponent via brute force, the worst opponents that he's faced, he always uses strategy. He goes into his head and uses that. Bane, on the other hand, goes to Venom and goes to the brute strength. We've seen him be a great strategist. This series in and of itself is a great run showing his strategy and how it works. But at the end, when things aren't going Bane's way, Bane goes to brute force, kicks on more venom, goes more to that. Bruce, on the other hand, goes to a plan, a strategy, and outthinks his opponents, and that winds up being his venom almost. Bruce is at his best when he relies on his wits more than he relies on his muscle. That's when he overcomes opponents like Bane who have superior strength. So I do think you're right on the yin and the yang, and I think it is taken to a different layer with those two. In many ways, they're full mirror images in how they handle it. And I really like the way that Bane was crafted for that purpose. I would, obviously the argument is always who is Batman's true nemesis, and you kind of go with the Joker. And I think that's true because of Bruce being an agent of order, the Joker being an agent of chaos. So I think that's true, and the history would show that piece. But Bane was really crafted to be the true antithesis of Batman. Really love the way they crafted this character, and Tom King just nailed this. because it's a character that's very important to me. I think that there haven't been as many stories that have hit on this level with Bane, but when he is used well, did you read Legacy, the story Legacy with Ra's al Ghul?
Yeah.
Where Bane was becoming the successor to Ra's legacy. It's kind of another way to, I guess, supersede Batman and that type of thing. That's another storyline that I love with Bane. I would say more often than not when Bane appears, because of the way they use him, they've used him very well. But there have been watered-down storylines where they just completely misunderstood the character that have been out there. This certainly is one of these. This is a story I would hand to somebody who is a casual Batman fan who read Nightfall and say, you should be reading the comics now because look what the writers are doing with a character like Bane. And this totally feels like a successor to Nightfall in how it's written, in the way that Bane's handled. This is a guy who's regrouped. He's come back more dangerous than he was before because he didn't have all the Arkham inmates breaking out in this case to take down Batman. It was his gang and him. And they came here and they made just as much of a splash in what they were doing. It was a very different way of going about it. Batman was not exhausted when Bane showed up. Batman is prepared for battle when Bane shows up. And it was something that really worked for me. This new Bat outfit, Jim, I am digging more and more that I see it in use. It's grown on me. I really love the way that different creators, different artists are doing their interpretation on it, and it works. I love the unique nature of the belt, like the way the belt kind of does that V-up thing. Mm-hmm. It all is visually working for me, whereas sometimes they made tweaks to the Bat outfit where I'm like, oh, I don't know, did you really need to do that? This one, I liked it out of the starting gate. I like it more in practice as time goes on.
Yeah, I think I've always been a fan of that look, and it's how you said that. With each of the artists, they're doing their little tweaking to it, and in the Bat costume is that one where you've got your base, but you can always have some freedom with it, and we've talked about it in the past where maybe he's got a little tweak for this situation or that situation. He doesn't necessarily have to be 100% the exact same every single time because. Batman is the great, he's got the great strategy where maybe he needs this little change to it. Now, the one thing it's within the coloring. I like when they give that, that inlay with the splash of purple in there. And it's probably more of shadow than it's actually a purple lining. But I do like how that makes the outfit pop. Mm-hmm. And that's just, an art choice that, again, this story isn't just a great story, with the dialogue and whatnot, but it is some beautiful just artwork. This creative team just, I was like, man, there's so many pages that I'm like, that would be a poster. That could be a poster. That could be a poster. And especially the way Selina is drawn in this, man. I gotta love this, the look of Catwoman and the usage of her over these past past couple story arcs that we've seen her. We've seen some great Catwoman stories, and in 16, this right here was just a great moment between these two, and it always has me rooting for them to be together, and then not just their little cat and bat game that they play, but actually together and actually working together and have her part of the team and have just all the long story of life that could happen between these two with they would have it would have a kid who would grow up to be a vigilante, just all those stuff that has happened in all the different universes and Elseworlds and whatnot. I'd love to see that play out in this universe, especially with this creative team running it, because it would be an outstanding story that you could find that balance of the softer, more tender side of Batman and not lose the Dark Knight and not lose this great, powerful superhero. You could show him have these brief moments of, where in a way you can say he lets his guard down, but I really don't think he's let his guard down. He's just given the appearance that he's let it down.
Hush did it so well.
Yeah.
As a storyline. I think the relationship between these two. I really like the swerve of Catwoman and the truth of what went on with Catwoman, with the murders and things like that. I like that storyline. It made it look like the example of zigging instead of zagging. There was a picture painted of Catwoman that turned out to be something very different. And I like how that played out between the two of them. The purple that you mentioned inside the cape has been a design choice since they redid the costume. So that actually was a part of the original, that costume redesign when they did this. There is the purple in the cape. Very similar to how the Tim Drake black cape had the yellow on the inside. This has the same sort of purple. The purple is a new choice as a part of it. So it's not just shadows. You'll actually see it on all the cover art and all the interiors when the artists, I think, know what the color scheme is for Batman. Because that was something that they put in. And I'm with you. I really like it. I think it's just something that adds a little pop without there's other colors you could put in there that would be like, that's really bright. let's not go there.
Interesting thing with purple, to be honest with you, it works well in the real world. It does, purples do work well for, shadowy or in urban environment. Because you think about a concrete building, when it's, in the shadows, it's not just pure black. There will be a slight tint to it. So technically there is some element too that would actually help out, especially also even a night sky. If you look up and at especially urban the urban city, heavy city environments, if you're looking up at the skies and you're looking at the shadowy areas of the skies, you'll see a purplish bluish tint to it. It won't just be a pure black area. So if you're gonna be a vigilante, and you've got to have because you don't just want one solid color mass, you do want multiple colors to help break up your physical form. And so that would actually technically be not a bad choice to make.
Right. No, I agree. And we're saying the same thing. And I really like that about this. Batman and Catwoman, with that whole sequence when Jim Gordon came running in, he's like, Batman, you could have helped. You're right. I could have. It's funny how he gets a little sassy these days when it comes to Catwoman. I think that's part of the real world too, right? It's this tragic relationship that they have. He loves her. He can't put that into words, but it's clear that he does. To look at somebody like that and go, could this ever work? And knowing you're really from two different worlds. She comes from the world of crime. He comes from the world of trying to stop it and being a victim of it. It's very, in her ways, she's a victim of it too, but she's embraced it. So it's an interesting yin and the yang. And the two of them meet in their sense of being angry against injustice. And sometimes their own anger and what they're angry about as far as injustice and how they feel that you achieve justice is where they butt heads. Because she's willing to break rules because she feels it's the right thing to do that he won't break. I really like that about their storyline and how they play out. There's something about those two characters when you get philosophical about them, you kind of get where they're coming from. This has been great writing with the two characters. I love having a Catwoman solo series, usually. And the key word there is usually. I'm really digging her story arc and her progression playing out in the Batman title with Batman. There's something to it. And to your point, I would like to see where this goes. Is it possible for it to go somewhere with these two? I don't know. But man, does this storyline make you start asking those questions? And I think it should. I think that's what you want from great Batman storytelling. Is you want the possibility. And there's something about it. You can see the longing that he has for her in that relationship. But also, seeing that Batman is a true vigilante in these moments where, Jim Gordon skirts that line with him where you can make the argument and see why his people would be looking at him and going, why are you letting him do that? Why are you letting him get away with things like that? In some ways, you could make an argument that he's an accomplice.
Yeah.
In those moments.
Well, and that's always the interesting side of the Gordon-Batman relationship, where he gives Batman that leeway, and he gives any of the agents of Batman, he gives them a leeway. Where he lets him get away with a little bit more. And I always wonder in my head, what if Batman ever told Gordon, hey, couldn't you back off Catwoman? Would Gordon do it? Would Gordon take his friend's word and somebody he trusts? Or would he say, hey, can't? This is the way it is. I'm giving you leeway. She doesn't get the leeway, because that's a story that's something we've never seen on page. And it's something Bruce would never do to Jim because he respects him so much. And it's something in my head. What if he actually asked them to stand down? Would he do it? That's something I would really love to see, a story where Bruce asks Gordon to stand down on something. And will he do it? I
think, that's a tough one. It wouldn't be now that Jim Gordon would. Jim Gordon would say no now because of the fact that Catwoman's got too much, he's got his duty. Jim Gordon's a man of duty, and Batman respects him due to it. Now, I do think if Batman and Catwoman, we've seen storylines from Earth 2 where Batman and Catwoman got married, right? And they had a kid, and they went that whole route. That was where Huntress came from. Well, in that type of situation, I could see him going to Jim and going, she's gone completely legit. She's done being Catwoman. You know what I mean? Done being Catwoman in that sense. I could see Jim Gordon saying, well, I'm really after Catwoman, not Selena Wayne. You know what I mean? That type of thing. I could see that being a thing where it's the unspoken, as long as she stays away from being the cat, I don't really have a reason to go after her. A wink and a nod kind of thing. I could see that happening. But it would really, there'd have to be a number of things happen in order to get to that point. It would be interesting to see. I'd love to see that storyline, that progress. I missed that Earth 2 stuff because that was a way to get these kind of stories that you're mentioning without taking away the present day. Like, I love the build of this relationship right now, wherever it goes. I don't know what Tom King has planned. I hope there's something more planned with it because what he's doing is brilliant. It's just, talk about a guy who's really delivering a intense and sexy storyline with these two that feels tragic. It's got all the elements of great Batman and Catwoman in it. And I do hope there's progression of this because I do want to see where this goes because of the fact that it is so compelling what he's doing right now. That's what the great thing about the Bat books right now. Each of them has a different focus. Detective Comics is focusing on a lot of the characters that are a part of Team Batman that aren't Robins. They're the people that we've wanted to see, and because they're teamed up, we're seeing a lot of interplay and interpersonal relationships with them and their interactions with Batman. It really is today's Batman and the Outsiders in the way that it's working, and I really think it's a smart choice because each of those characters are getting a spotlight. The relationship with Batman gets a spotlight where it's needed. But this is the book that's focused on Batman more, I feel. And then you've got All-Star Batman. And it's funny how that book on paper takes a back seat for me. But when I read it, it's very similar to what you said earlier. I'm totally entrenched in it. But it's a lot like an in-continuity Legends of the Dark Knight for me, and I do not mean that diminishing that title at all. I always loved that book because they were storylines that you felt like mattered, and they were written by top-tier talent, so they were just really well put-together storylines. The thing that I think is a nice twist about this one is it's all of that with it being in continuity. So it's smart in how it's being done. But because it's not this big epic I Am Bane storyline or the Court of Owls or, some of the other, big epic arcs that Scott Snyder was doing when he was writing it, the Snyder book that's being written now, I'm digging, but it's more of an exploration of the villains of the world, fleshing them out. And I like that, but it's not the big epic that you're getting from this. And I don't mind it. It's kind of you use palate cleansers. Legends of the Dark Knight always was that for me. As far as I wanted more Batman, but I didn't need it to be this big in continuity heavy story. I needed it to be a storyline that felt like it was incredibly well written. I felt like I was getting something of value, but at the same time, it isn't so bogged down in heavy continuity. So that I really like the back books right now and how they're doing it because this storyline's going on, I like that I can read a couple issues of this, then jump on over to what Tom King's doing and just really enjoy a great Two-Face storyline or something like that, I think there's a nice synergy between what's going on with this title, with Detective Comics, and the way that title's being written. Because there's a lot of characters now that aren't having a chance for a spotlight that are getting them because of the way that these books are uniquely crafted. And that's where I think they're being smart. These books aren't in competition for each other. They complement each other in what they do. And that's the part that I think really is grabbing me from this. So we're back into the storyline right now. We're taking a look at Gotham Girl. Gotham and Gotham Girl have been a fixture in this series since the beginning of Rebirth. And Gotham Girl was most recently affected very heavily with what happened with Psycho Pirate. Her sense of fear and being taken on. I really like how Bruce feels a responsibility to the people that are affected by the tragedies that happen in his world and his own role in that piece. And I like that Alfred work together to try and find a treatment. Because Alfred's this guy like where you've got like Bruce working with all of these people. He's working with Catwoman. He's working with the Robins. He's, and pushing them aside. He works with Jim Gordon. But Alfred's always the one that this battle's going on, this war's going on. He's not telling Alfred, get out of town. He and Alfred are working together to save Gotham Girl. And Alfred's that one guy that you can count on one hand the amount of times that Bruce has sent him away. And there's a reason for that. He really is the true... If you take a look at what is Team Batman, it's really Bruce and Alfred at the end of the day. There's other people that become a part of that puzzle, but it really is, in order for Batman to truly function. I think this is why were the Nolan films so great. I think Christopher Nolan nailed their relationship in the way that he wrote it in his version of Batman. And I think it's something that when you see these two together and you see Alfred being that big of a part of the puzzle, the comics really do this and do it well. The ending, the cliffhanger of this one, I didn't see this first issue going here, where you see Nightwing, and Jason Todd and Damian hanging with this "I am Bane" painted on them.
Here's the funny thing: when I first saw that, I was, I initially was thinking, is that actually them, or is that just people in the costume that Bane is messing with Bruce? And I was thinking, because, they look dead as dead. And I'm like, they're not killing off all three of them. If they're going to kill off a Robin, okay, they'll just kill off one, but not all three. And so for me, that was like, wait, is that? No, it can't. Yeah, it can't be. And so I had it in my head that it wasn't actually them. Because I was so thinking that, no, it can't be them. It has to be somebody else, just somebody in the costumes. And then, of course, when you go on into 17, which starts off, you see, no, that was actually them. Bane did get to them. So then I had to jump back and reread 17 again. I was like, wait, hold on. Okay, yeah, then it was one of those things where, it's that same talk of swerving where I think it's one way, no, it's another. Okay, that's even better now. That's even cooler that, Bane's able to take down, all three of them, have them in the cave hanging like that. I was like, dang, that is awesome. Again, a great, cool Bane usage that's something he would do. Now, part of me really wants to see the fight. I so want to see how they got Damian, because that's with Nightwing and Jason, yeah, they're cool and it's awesome, but Damian's my little monster, and I always want to see him fight. I always want to see what happens to him. I want to see how they got him. Because, in my head, I've got this whole storyline where Damian takes out the two minions, and that's when Bane gets him, and it's not, it's one of those things, because Damian, one of the weaknesses Damian does have is he is that dang good, but you know what? That can also be a weakness sometimes where you think, no, if you start getting to that point in your mind where I'm untouchable, that's when people can get to you. And that's like Damian's personal weakness that he has. I think, I'm wondering if that's what, was exploited. Like Dick Grayson's weakness is, innocent lives. If you make it look like there's someone innocent in, in danger, Dick Grayson's going to jump in first to save the day and not think, could this possibly be a Bane trap? And with Jason, well, Jason's got his issues with just, the bravado where he's got to, go head one-on-one. My guess with, Jason, that was a Bane call out. That was Bane versus Jason Todd. Let's dance right now, you and me. Don't bring in your little brothers. This is just you and me. And that's how he took down Jason. So in my head, as I said, I've got how he took down each one of them. And I want to see if I'm right.
I actually like that the story leaves you with this idea of figuring out yourself. I like the things, like, I liked how the handling of Bird, like you talk about issue 17, so we're jumping into that one, right? You got Bronze Tiger there. The door flips open, and all of a sudden Bird comes, you can caw! What you don't see, I think, is just as compelling as what you do. And I really like the way this particular story arc leaves you as the reader to fill in the blanks. So the storyline, I want to see it too the way you do. I like, where you're at. But I'm enjoying listening to your interpretation of it because mine is different. That's not a right or wrong. You're right. You craft it in your head. And it is based on which character you focus on. So your focus was on Damien, whereas I was focused on the three of them working together as a unit. And you're right, though. There is very much a Damien that maybe just kind of does his own thing, which, great. I really enjoyed that aspect of this. The fact that you could interpret what happened to those three any way you want to, and it's all valid.
Oh, yeah, and I'm not knocking the story we got, by the way, just to make sure everyone realizes. I loved how this played out, and I do love the fact that we don't know how they took him down. This is just me one that I've got that addict mindset where one's good but 1,000's great, so give me more.
I'm with you.
So I'm happy with what I've got, but I'm a greedy son of a gun. I want more, so that's why I always say I wish we knew exactly what and again, it's also I want to know what Tom King thought, what he thought, what he laid out. Because as I said, throughout the story, there are times when I'm thinking it's going to go A and it zigs. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's awesome. So I've got in my head how the story goes. I want to see the zig, see if I'm, see how he would tell the story. Because again, I love how he tells the stories. I love, this layout and just, the pacing that we get on these adventures, and it's, you think about it, this is a 5-part story arc, where, 5-issue story arc where it's, he's taking his time. He's laying out this. He didn't rush into anything. This whole the first issue, we didn't even have one visual appearance of Bane. It was just, he's coming. Let's get ready. His one minion came. He's talking to his team. Batman's gathering his forces. And then it ends with all three of them hanging. So then we jump into 17 where, again, it's the continuation. It's just this great build to it. And I love how there's an anticipation to the fight. It's coming. Batman versus Bane, one-on-one. The fight's coming. And I love how this whole story throughout all 5 parts just kept building to that moment. It opens up, of course, the Fortress of Solitude with, Bruce and Superman. I love the fact that they brought him into this as the guardians of, Damian, Jason, and Dick. They, put him in there saying, hey, and even that one moment between Bruce and, Bruce and Clark saying, hey, it's him or me, no one else. Just that look between the two of them where he's like, basically telling him, hey, stay out of this. This is my fight. And I love that moment between the two of them where it's like, okay, this is it, and he's trusting Bruce that Bruce can handle Bane and he's not going to interfere and he's going to keep an eye on these three and wait till everything settles before he releases them from the suspended animation.
And there's 2 pieces that I really want to talk about. First of all, actually 3, because I want to talk about the fact that we haven't seen Bane yet, and we haven't actually seen his minions. We saw evidence of Bird, but we didn't actually see him yet. I really loved that choice. To your point of building anticipation, this is a story all about it. But you've got Clark walking into the fortress. Oh, hello. And then just right away, how bad? This is the unspoken thing between the two of them. And remember, this is now the Clark that has that history with him.
Yes.
And, he knows this guy. And I really love that, he's walking along and the number of uses of the word okay and how it can mean so many different things. There's that initial okay as he's looking at the suns. And then there's that part of himself that's like, okay. You can really tell that Superman's going through a flurry of emotions there. And I really loved the writing choices in those 2 pages. 2 pages that really told a lot of story between 2 friends that shows a writer's understanding of that relationship and how it would pay off here. Because you got to be asking yourself, with this Bane storyline going on, why wouldn't Superman interfere? These 2 are friends, right? Especially with what you're seeing. Forget the history. You know, whether or not Batman has that same history with Superman. He doesn't. True. But if you're reading what's going on right now in the Superman title, or you're reading what's going on right now in Super Sons, you've seen these guys, their relationship has evolved and developed. These are the guys that did start off Justice League together. They're also 2 of the longest running heroes in this continuity right now. So there's a strong relationship there between the 2 of them that has been established now in comics, including the fact that they had a title together. So I really like the way that this storyline addresses the fact that Superman would not just ignore this. You got to do something about it. Those 2 pages were really well placed.
Oh God, yeah, and it's funny again, swerves and just coolness, and we jump into Arkham, and I loved how this played out, where Arkham is wielding Hush. And I did air quotes around both Arkham and Hush, as I said them. But again, I'm reading this and I'm watching, going through this, and you kick yourself, for not seeing this coming, but this was a great, play on Bruce's part. Put Alfred, Gotham Girl in a secured area that Bane can't get to. But not only just put them in a safe spot, put them with Psycho Pirates so Alfred can get the administrating the sessions for Gotham Girl to get her back. But also, this is this grand ambush, setup that Bruce has for Bane. There's so many different layers to what you're seeing. Like, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. Oh man, that's awesome. I loved how this played out throughout the full 5-issue story arc. Because initially up front, I'm reading, oh, that's kind of cool. Then, oh, that's a neat swerve. And then later on, you learn there's more to the layers. There's more to the planning. It's, you gotta just, it's when you're dealing with the world's greatest detective. When you're telling a story, you have to have a story that has this level of complexity, but it's a simple complexity in that it's not something where I can't follow, where my brain hurts following it. But there is a complexity to it that as it plays out and as you realize it, you're smacking yourself in the head saying, oh, I should have seen that. That was so right there. Oh, and how many times do you keep saying that, in a single story and go, man, this is awesome.
I like that shot on the Arkham Asylum clock tower. I'm marveling at that right now. It's the whole art team really did a great job with this one, where he's up there. I have mine, and I was a big fan of Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man run. Like so many, when you got to see, especially that was what put him on the map right before Spawn, and he would do these kind of spreads where so much of the way that he used webbing and Spider-Man's positioning and things like that, there was like a flowing to certain things that were going on, especially, the spider web, and it seemed the way that he did Spider-Man poses were really sweet. I'm looking at the pose of Batman here, and the cape being so organic in how it flows. It almost is, it's not almost, it's very gothic in its style. And I've always been a fan of that. Neil Adams always did a great job of making really great use of the cape, and that was something I think as a kid, you got to see those type of poses and really enjoy them. And I think modern interpretation looks back to things like that. But this is where I think the purple shines, too, on the inside of the cape, because you see it in the color work. Yeah. You see it up on the upper left-hand side corner, and you see it in the bottom right-hand side. I think it really just adds a nice depth, even to the point where you see it in between his arm and his leg underneath the bat symbol. You see a little bit of the purple flowing there because that would be that inside of the cape still. I think that attention to detail and the color work really stood out for me, because I think that just added something to this piece that set it aside from other pieces that we've seen like this, because this new costume just has that opportunity.
And well, just looking at this page, this is one of those pages on my art read-throughs where I was like, I want this as a poster. I want this hanging on my wall because
Yes.
this looks awesome. And it's not just how cool, because I'm agreeing everything you're saying about positioning and capable, but even you just look at just the background stuff, the detail
Yes.
they spent on this page, and it's pencils, inks, and coloring where there's no simple whitewash on anything. Everything's got layering to it. Everything's got the little etch and details in like the brick and mortar around on the ceiling, on the chimney right there. You've got just the way the shingles just kind of have that weathered look to them, that gothic look to them, and of course the tower right there in the background, just the way everything's positioned there, and of course you can't even, take away from just the look on his face, that cowl look, that look at the cowl, and just that, okay, Batman's in a mood, he's ready to do some stomping, and I love just have that intent when he's got that intensity in his eyes, where you can tell. Even though he's got the whitewash on the eyes because of the way the cowl is, you can still tell there's just that razor sharp intensity going on.
The sequence with Bird was really, really great outside the orphanage, where you've got Selina there, clearly taking care of the cats. At first I thought, oh, are they putting Black Canary in this? I really liked how they did her outfit. And until Bird was making it, until the cats were appearing, obviously you started taking a look at that. And Bird doing his whistle, talking about how it's not so hard to get rid of cats. I just really liked the way that played out. This is Catwoman, who is somebody we know to be incredibly formidable. She's gone toe-to-toe with the Bat, and this really stepped up the game of what Bird is and added an intimidation factor that he had in the original Nightfall. But time's moved on since then, and we've seen a lot of intimidating characters come and go. This really did a nice job of putting Bane's gang back on the map. Bird in particular. They really did a great job making Bird creepy and formidable. I like that it wasn't just his use of the birds. He pulled out the gun. He shot the bullet. It was a combination of the two. He and the Bird are partners on this, and I really liked that usage. It was great visually, great dialogue, and a kick-butt moment that surprised Catwoman.
Air quotes around the word surprise.
Yes, yes. That's what I like about it. In the first read through, you're like sitting there going, "How are they going to get out of this?" And I really love when you don't know. I like when you don't know that there's another layer to this that you're not aware of. It's not surface level. There's something deeper going on. You're right. This storyline, when you look through it again, you can feel the initial emotion that you had reading it the first time through, but then, man, is it a very different and a very fun read the second time through, the third time through, when you know where this is going and you see the little pieces that are sprinkled in that point out what's going on.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. And it's funny as as I said before, just the air quotes around surprise, the air quotes around capturing Selina Kyle. I loved how that played out because. Again, this was a story of multiple swerves on multiple swerves, and it was some really just great, it was a great layout of the story. And I keep repeating those phrases over and over again, I know, but it is just something as we're going back through this again, I'm reminding, oh yeah. I think that for me is the strength of a well-written story. How many times can you reread a story? I think we've both said that the worst thing we could ever say about a book is I read it once and I'm not going to read it again. That's the worst thing for us we can say. And right now, to date, I've probably read this story arc about 5 times easily. And I'm still getting excited as we're talking about it. That's how good this was. I'm already planning when this one comes out in Absolute, I'm jumping on this one. This is one I want to have where I can just, and a whim, let me just read. I want to read a good Bane story. I want to read a good Bat story. Let me pull this one out. So this is one that I already have in my head for when I see that the Absolute's out there, I'm jumping on it because that's how much I love this story.
Would you put this with that initial arc? The arc where they went to Bane's? You put that all together, right?
Oh, yeah.
I hope they do an Absolute.
But here's the thing. I like this one more over the other one.
Oh, I do too, but here's the thing. For an Absolute edition, they're not going to put 5 issues in an Absolute edition. So you'd have to put the whole arc together. Both of them.
Yeah. Now, would you include the rooftops?
Yes.
Yeah.
If it was me, wait, if it was me, yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I know they're not gonna call me up and say, "Hey, what do you think?" But if they did, if they did, I'd be like, "Listen, I would pretend I wouldn't buy it if they didn't put it in, just because I'd want to see them there." The truth of the matter is, I would buy it with just the two main arcs, but I really think the rooftop piece kind of connects to this. I would put those issues together. I'd be interested to see if they do any of this work as absolutes. I don't know what generates an absolute, like a current absolute, because we see a lot of classic storylines. Like I'm getting the Preacher books that are being done as absolute editions most recently, and I'm doing Why the Last Man, in the absolute editions, and those are great storylines in there. I wonder when you're looking at something very contemporary, and I mean those are very recent and Why the Last Man in particular is more contemporary than Preacher even in its story arc. But those are big classic stories that, Preacher's led to television, and I believe Y is in some form of television or film development. I don't know.
They keep talking about it.
Yeah. Both should be on the screen. Preacher's great. I don't know what leads to current storylines. You would imagine a great Batman storyline like this would wind up in that version. I would love for them to have I guess to your point, maybe you do a thinner absolute with maybe a lesser price point of a 5-issue arc. I would like this in something oversized.
Yeah. Or deluxe hardcover or something. Just, if they're not going to go the quote unquote, if they're going to go the full on absolute something, when this is collected, I'm getting this.
Yeah. To me, I like those deluxe that they do when they're a little bit bigger.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's the artwork in this is really a highlight, and I really am enjoying this. I want to see that in a bigger size, a bigger format. So, if you're going to sell me on doing a buy of this again, because to your point, this is a great story arc. I'll buy this in a hardcover. I don't buy trades that much now. Like I do find that I'm becoming. I need to have the hardcover. I'm becoming a little snotty. I got to admit I am. Just because of the fact that I think with digital being a part of the mix, I'm finding that I'm already buying things, not everything, but I'm buying a number of things that I'm really enjoying twice already, that it's really hard for me to justify now going and buying a trade. When I've got the paper singles, I've got the digital. I really, if I want the collected edition, I want the hardcover. And I'm glad the trades are out there for those people that are looking for an inexpensive way to read a storyline that maybe they missed before. So that's great. I'm all for it. I like multiple formats. But I can't buy 87 formats anymore. I'm trying to keep myself to my 2 or 3 that I always have for storylines such as this.
Well, it's funny because one of the things I'm doing with trades, I'm buying the digital trade.
Oh, I am too.
Of different stories, and so I am still buying trades, but if I buy a trade, it'll be in the digital version of it, and that's what I'm doing with some of the Marvel stuff. I'm getting trades, digitally of Marvel stories, so I got everything together, and I can sit down and read it that way. And for me, it's kind of it's partially convenience, partially if you itemize the pricing of that trade, it's still less than if you bought them individually. So I'm like, I think I'm gonna go with this way. So I'm still getting trades. I'm just doing them things a little differently now, and I wonder how things will be 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Will we even have this physical format anymore? Will everything be pure digital? I don't know. It's one of those that I always wonder and think about, and I'm like I'll deal with that as it comes out.
We drive that by the fact that I like the physical.
Yeah, me too.
So I mean, there's certain things I really like to have physical. Certain types of collector's editions and things like that. Absolutes for me, I will keep buying absolutes from here on. Even if they were to go all digital, I don't see. It's such an interesting collector's market. I don't see digital ever taking the place of that physical collectability. It's such a swag piece, I think, to have them. I think digital really has got to develop an identity of pricing, because I think it doesn't make sense a lot of the times, because there's times where it's so much cheaper to buy physical a lot of which doesn't make any sense to me, just because of the nature of it. I do agree. I think supporting comic shops are great, and it is that piece. But I think when you walk into a physical comic shop, you're paying full price. You go to, unless your comic shop has a pull list deal, which a lot of them do, which I think is fantastic. I don't know. I like digital trades. Do you okay, so you mentioned getting some Marvel trades. Do you buy them at full price, or do you wait till they have those flash sales or things that go on Comixology, or is it a mix?
Mix.
Yeah.
Because it's like the current Captain America stuff with Steve Rogers Captain America.
Oh, that's great.
I'm getting that now in digital trade. And it's the reason I'm doing that is, as I said, I'm keeping the story together. I can sit down in one reading, read it all without having to open different open different issues. Plus, also, if I would have bought one or one at a time, it's kind of an easy convenience for me.
Wait, so you haven't read any Secret Empire?
No, I haven't yet.
Oh,
yeah.
Dude,
well,
it's so good. It is. It's really, really good. I'm honestly comic book happy right now. My biggest problem is the economy of time right now.
Yes.
Versus quality, because I'm reading so many good things across comics right now. But that's Secret Empire. And I'm a big Captain America fan. But Secret Empire is, I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but it is, I don't want to say it's the payoff. It's the culmination of where everything's been building. It's a
cool.
It's a great story right now. It's before we jump back into Batman, seeing as we're talking a little bit of Marvel, have you seen Guardians of the Galaxy 2 yet?
I have not been able to. Again, it's a time thing. I haven't been able to get to the theater.
I went Thursday. I literally, Friday I was at work till, not Friday, I'm sorry, Wednesday I was at work till 9 o'clock. I was at a PTO meeting doing a presentation. I literally was like, Guardians of the Galaxy comes out tomorrow, because that Thursday, let's say it comes out Friday. No, it comes out Thursday. When are we just going to get honest about it? Nothing comes out on Friday anymore that's, a major release, especially in comic book movies. So I went to the Thursday 4:30 double feature. I saw in 3D the first one and the second one, which I don't normally do that because I'm a sleeper at movies. I tend to, especially because of work schedules and stuff, where I work really long the day before. I work like a 14-hour day the day before. So I'm like, I don't know. Am I going to do the double feature? I was so stoked for that movie that I went to the double feature. My God, is that a great movie. The second one is so good. I might make an argument that the second one is better than the first. The only catch is the first was so new.
Yeah.
That, the concept was just like, wow, they really did this, and they did it this way, and how cool was it? The second one, I'm not going to spoil anything other than to say I just really, really enjoyed it. The output that's going on right now of the Marvel stuff's phenomenal, and I'm really enjoying all of it. The stuff that people are getting, snarky about, I'm like, what, are you kidding me? They did another trailer for that, I think it's the same trailer for Spider-Man Homecoming. I'm excited for that bad boy. It's going to be a good summer. It's really going to be a good summer of films, and I'm really enjoying it. So, I don't know. Guardians of the Galaxy, though, highly recommend. Highly recommend that movie. It was really,
okay,
really
yeah, eventually I will. I'll figure out a time when I'm able to see it, but it's one of those. We talk about time management. Especially lately. You know how my days have been going.
So back into the comic, we see the Commissioner Gordon battle with Bird and and the gang. It really is. I think is that Trog? Is that the one that's Trog? Is that how that? I keep forgetting the names of them when we get to that point, because Bird's always the one that is pretty obvious. I think it's Trog, Zombie, and Bird, and I think Trog is that one, the big, brutal one.
Trog's the big one.
Yeah. So this is where we see Duke show up on the scene, and his own justification of the fact that why are you here? I don't know. I shouldn't be. That type of bit was going on. I really liked how we saw Duke show that he is a Robin for all intents and purposes. I'm glad that, because I liked that We Are Robin book, and I'm glad that he as a character is still a part of this universe. in his role. It gives you talk about progression. I think Duke is an example of progression. And I'm liking that he's got a different sort of outfit. He's got a different sort of role. And his own kind of helping Jim Gordon until Bane shows up. That was one of the coolest sequences. Because you see the wall crumbling there. And Bane's hands just coming through. The look of shock on Jim Gordon's face, I thought was just really great how that all played out. Leading to us seeing Bane with all four of them on the rooftop, waiting there for Batman for the next part of the battle, with the caw, caw, caw being such a part of what's going on. Batman just waiting, laying in wait for the next phase of this plan to play out. I like when something seems desperate, but then you take a look at that and go, because Batman has a look of almost shock on his face, then it shifts to determination. You want to know how the plan was originally laid out. I really like the way this storyline played out itself, because as a fan reading it, it's like, okay, how's Batman going to overcome this? 4 of his allies are taken apart by Bane. Bane's 3 guys are still running around causing trouble. This was really just a well put together first 2 issues of this arc where we didn't see a whole lot of Bane. Other than the fact that, his hands came through a wall, you didn't really see a whole lot of him. Right at the end, the cliffhanger is, that Bane's got everybody. You were left in your mind's eye to figure out a lot of this. Really well put together. Suspense is just such a key to this whole thing.
Oh, God, yeah. And it's funny, as you said, we still haven't seen Bane. That was the very beginning of seeing him, was just the part of his hand. And again, the build to this thing, and just the again, each issue has that great ending where you're like, whoa, each time gives you that nice pop right at the end, gets you anticipating for what the next one is. And when you're reading them in, just again, when I was doing my read-throughs in sequential order, every single time I still popped when I saw that. I knew it was coming. I know what was going to happen, but I still popped at just the visual, the visceralness of that. Especially, Catwoman looked like she got a good beating on her. She got some thumping. She had some blood. Of course, Gordon was got a little beat down as well. And I love just to look at how the physicality of them was. And again, it just added to that whole shock and awe factor of really great cliffhanger ending, anticipation into the next issue.
Speaking of the next issue, issue number 18, I like that every issue in this had its own vibe, its own feel. It all feels like it's building part of this arc. We had that anticipation build. Then the anticipation now to the payoff of how is this all going to start playing out. Then this issue really starts to explain the yin and the yang of Bane and Batman in advancing the storyline, getting ready for the battle between these two by telling us a little bit of they have a very similar history. And I like how they outline this. It was left column Bruce, right column Bane, interspersing the two of them in their storylines. I really enjoyed it until then you got the battle starting. Do you know who I am? I am Bane. I mean, that stuff was just really great. The action playing out on this was something that I really enjoyed, interspersed by a historical piece of these two characters. And I think it does show why Bane is far more physically brutal than Bruce. And there is a mental strategy to the guy, but the physical's where he goes to, the rage, the anger that comes through with him. Whereas Batman really is more driven by the fact that he honed himself mentally. I like it. I like the distinction between the two in the mirror images. I really enjoyed this issue. Was probably my favorite one out of the batch because I didn't expect this kind of exploration of the histories of the two characters.
Again, completely agree with what you said there. That, for me, was the big swerve on how the story was going to get played out. Because, when you first, as you said, they're going through the breakdown, and then flash the present day fight. Breakdown, flash. And they kept those time jumps back and forth where, showing each of them developing and building and who they are to the present day fight. Then back, past, front, jumping back and forth. That for me was just a really cool just experience. And again, one of the things that I love about Tom King's writing style is he does limited usage of thought bubbles, to the point where I don't think he has any in this issue. And but it's always the visual art that's telling it, and any dialogue. And then just the little limited stuff that we have, going back and forth, in each of them growing up, just that personal dialogue they're having to their own mother, as they're training, as they're doing it, instead of putting it in a thought bubble, it's him actually, verbally stating it. Then to the Bane stuff where he's, do you know who I am? And it's every time, I don't know if you do it, but I do it, when... sometimes when I'm really caught into a story and I'm reading it, I read it out loud and I read it in voices, and with Bane, I have a hard time coming up with what my voice for Bane is. Because when I first started reading Bane, I always had the Bane voice, like that kind of, that dark, this scary voice. And then, later on when I started thinking about it, he should have a little bit of a, accent, based on, he's down South America. So he should have a little bit of an accent, which I can't do. So that throws me off. And then you got the movie where you got the Bane voice that kind of sounded like this. So I'm always in a weird moments when I'm reading Bane.
You just did like a Sean Connery of Bane.
Exactly. Well, that's how as I said, I can't do accents.
It really was. It sounded like very Hunt for Red October. It was.
That ends up being my Bane voice. So and it's because with the movie that when I heard it, that's kind of how it locked in my head, and then as every time I go through it, so imagine do you know who I am? So then you shift it even farther. Wow. Sean Connery, which is way off kilter what it should be. So I have my own issues when I'm reading this, but one of the things I do just absolutely love just the beatdown. I love this fight sequence where throughout this issue, throughout the next issue, you're like, he's beating Batman. And what's going on here? What's going to happen? And you keep wondering, when's gonna be the rally? When's Batman gonna fight back? Is it gonna be help from the team? Is it gonna be what's it gonna be to take him down? And I love that how it was something that I missed on my first read through, just how they're showing the development, the discipline. It's not just there is that if you're going to be a fighter, if you're going to do this type of stuff, it's not just about being the strongest and being the fastest. It's about being able to take the punch. And that's it's everybody's got a strategy until you get punched in the face. Can you take that first punch? Can you take that hit and keep fighting? And I loved how this really accentuated the fact that Bruce can not only deliver a punch, and he's not only is tough as all heck, he can take a beating and keep coming. And that for me was something that I was really loving, especially going through showing him as a child developing to the point where he would get to where he is at now.
Your voices have totally thrown me out now because I'm looking at Batman fighting Bane and I'm hearing this. Batman, I want you in my belly. I'm just like, I'm kidding. It's such a great fight scene. Did you see it was DiDio's Hardware?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I like when they put in little winks and nods like that. They do it on the TV shows a lot too, where you have nods to comic creators or people behind the scenes and stuff, and I think that's great. The dialogue in the whole fight scene, I think, was great. Because it wasn't, you're right, that internal dialogue, it was external. It was all, this, I'm not some rich boy playing dress up. I'm not another one of your madmen howling at the moon. Just this, Bane's need for validation and his need to be something more, to be the king of it all, the ruler of it all. Really is an interesting drive of Bane's, to come up from nothing to be everything. And it's a drive for him, and he will not stop until he hits that point. And it is funny how Batman, Bane was at peace with what he was, he was settled and with his plan, and Batman came and, he shook that world up. He brought this down on Gotham. It's an interesting storyline for that piece, because Bane's there because of Batman's choices. I really enjoy the way that this storyline is playing out, where if you play it from that level, such a different piece.
Yeah, and again, it's one of that you talk about just layering and where it's building on. And it's something we've talked about throughout this entire, story arc, that you have to look at, just you look at the surface and you look at the story that's playing out, but you got to look at what's going to be the next step. What's the next part to it? Because this, as I said, this was a great beatdown of Batman, where it's, Bane is out for blood. Bane is out for the pirate. He is not going to stop. And it's just this destructive force of nature that has just come crashing down on him. And I loved seeing, Batman get his butt kicked. I love to see the beatdown because it was something that, it made the ending so much more, oh my God, I can't believe that. This was the buildup, we were anticipating first two issues. We wanted to see the fight. So when this fight's going down, you see Batman throw like maybe two punches, but they either miss or have no effect. This fight is all Bane, and he is just hammering him. And it was a cool moment where he's like, "Give me the pirate now." Bat still no. And there's still the defiance, and you're like, yeah, that's the hero, that's the champion. No, he's setting up Bane. This is the great rope-a-dope that he is doing to Bane, and I love the fact that that's what this whole thing has all been about: getting Bane, keep swinging, keep punching, tire yourself out. I can take the pain, and I love seeing that.
It's very Rocky.
Yeah,
I always liked what Rocky did that with, like Apollo Creed. He did it with Clubber Lang. It was really being
he did it with every one of his fights.
Yeah, you're right. Well, the ones that he won. I thought that this issue was going to end with that Day 4 sequence where Bane, shut up, that bit.
Yeah.
And that was when everything took a turn. This had like the greatest ending, because normally your cliffhangers always is like dark and grim cliffhangers where you're like, oh crap, how's Batman going to survive this? This was like a really badass cliffhanger. I really enjoyed every moment of this, because I'm like, Bane's plans started to crumble during all this. Bird, respond, acknowledge. I'm so sorry. Mr. Bird is currently unavailable. May I take a message? And that was so great. I am Cat.
Yeah.
I mean, what a great sequence of events, leading to Batman walking in knowing that this was all part of a larger plan. Part 3 was just great because it was such a surprise issue in a storyline that had so much going on. I was so chomping at the bit for issue number 19 because of the fact that 18 was so great. The whole thing has been a great run, but I like that normally you wait till the very end to start seeing elements of this. Because it's Bane, it can't wait till then. You have to start turning the tide partway through it. And part 4 of this, when it kicked off, I was like so ready to see where this was going to go and what the plan actually was. What a great, great story arc. Because now he's in Arkham. Last time we saw Bane in Arkham, Bane initiated this big release in Arkham that kicked off a storyline and was used to take down Batman. To see it this way, where Bruce is using Arkham Asylum to his advantage this time around, it's a very different sort of play.
Oh God, and I liked how, because we'll see later on when when Alfred realizes what Bruce did, he wasn't aware of that part of the plan. That was, and part of me wonders, was that an audible that Bruce called, or was he always planning on using the inmates to slow down, weaken Bane? Or it's funny, even you say slow down and weaken, but part of me thinks it wasn't a slow down weaken. It was he wanted Bane to get more jacked up. He wanted Bane to feel like he was losing control because, as we said earlier, one of Bane's weaknesses is when his plan starts falling apart, he turns to the venom. He turns to making himself stronger. He turns to the physical brute force of pounding it in, as opposed to thinking it through and recognizing he's walking into a trap. So Bruce wants him jacked up. Bruce wants him thinking, not thinking, but just punching. He wants the monster, not the thinker that's Bane. And I love how, when I first read it, I'm thinking, okay, he's just using the inmates to slow him down. But when you look at it and you start analyzing again, looking at the Bat, knowing that he always has a plan, knowing he's the great, strategist, and it's, it's not just, if you think it's A, it's really Z. That's where it's going to come from with Batman. So knowing that, you start looking at, and again, it's part of the stuff that I love about this story was after reading it through multiple times, I'm still coming up with, no, he was probably thinking this. No, he's probably thinking that. Oh, it's probably that. And I loved how just this played out with each of these different inmates having a little bit different role to further the Bat's plan.
I love this. I am Solomon Grundy. I am Amygdala. I am Torment. I am Ruin. I am Plague. I am Venom. I am Bane. You stand between myself and the Bat, and so you will stand no more. That is what Bane is. Those moments, and then you take that into him versus Scarecrow, where he's spraying spraying Bane with that piece with its the fear of God, because he's talking about his own fear when he's seeing him in that moment, and he's like, can you feel them? Can you describe those fears to me? Because that is Scarecrow's obsession, right? Those fears. And I am Bane. I don't have nightmares. I give nightmares.
Again, I love how I'm right with you. I love that moment. I give nightmares. And then the that is Scarecrow. He made the Scarecrow scream. He made the man who is fear be afraid. And I love that moment. I love the fact that we didn't see what he did to him. Again, those in the horror movies where you don't actually see it, but you don't see what's going on, but you have that where they leave it up to your mind to figure out what's going to be the next, what happened. Those are always the more scary and more, the more extreme moments of a good story. So right here we had that with the Scarecrow. We had not knowing what did Bane do to Scarecrow to get that reaction out of him.
He killed Gotham. He broke Gotham Girl. He shot Selina. Bruce. He hanged the boys. He hanged my son from a rock in a cave. I'm not running. Look around you, Alfred. Look at where we are. After all we've gone through, look where we've ended up. Did you expect anything else? I just love the debate between the two of them in that sequence of events. That dialogue in this was the killer dialogue issue for me, this one. And the dialogue means so much more because of the build to this. You don't want to start off with this. You want to start ending with this. You just kind of going, yeah, hit me with everything. It's ba-bam, 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 all because you built this storyline with this pace. This is a great understanding of how to, and I don't think you can get away with this with every comic. You can do this in a Batman book because it's going to be around for the next issue. You're in a different sort of place with a newer character where you can't necessarily do this kind of build because you want to be given payoff moments so that people will be hooked to come back. In this one, I really love the pacing of it because you nailed everything in this issue because of this slow build to this point. And slow is maybe not the right word, but seeing him take down every single person in Arkham, including Flamingo. Which I'm like,
well, I was shocked by that one. I thought Flamingo had a really great chance at taking him.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be the one. I figured, if there's going to be a guy in there, it's like put him up with Flamingo and that's going to be over. I love that they went with everybody. You know what? We need a panel with Flamingo.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because as this is going on, just everything that, in a way, you can't call him he's not the you can't say Bane's not the bad guy because it is Bane, but I do like his logic in this that he was done with everything. He was, he had his calm. He was done with the Venom. He was done, and then Bruce stole that from him, and it brought him all the way back. Again, it's the tragedy that is Bane, going through this, and even that final piece where he's talking to Copperhead. I was done, and he came, and he broke my back. He stole my peace. I was done. And just to look at the look at Torment, just how much, is on Bane's face. You're just like, you can't help but feel kind of bad for the guy, even though, he's this horrible monster, but again, is he a monster of his own doing? Is he a monster of, circumstance? What made Bane do what he does? And it was a really cool kind of moment.
Yeah, I like how Bane had this sense of Calendar Man in that sequence where he's like, I was done. It's never done. You will never stop, and neither shall Batman. And this whole idea that this just will be this ongoing cycle. Very similar to the issues that Batman has with Joker and Riddler. You know, these are cycles that will just keep continuing. There was something really great about the way that that played out. I like that Riddler was the one that finally got Bane in to where Batman was. There was Riddler going to his usual thrill. One is a door, not a door, and Bane grabbing him by the head. You know, it's just such a great sequence. Talking about how, you know, he would find, who did he say?
Puzzler,
yeah.
Yes. You have 30 seconds, then I break you and fetch Puzzler.
Leading to a great spread of the two of them finally facing off, because Batman did to Bane what Bane did to him.
Yeah.
You know, it's now it's an even fight because Bane's been beat up pretty good. He's been jacked up as far as you can, and it leads to the two of them in this ending final battle. What a great cliffhanger this was, because you got to see the tide turn with Batman, I don't want to say renewed and refreshed, but ready to go because Bane's had to go through a gauntlet to get to him, and now the final battle begins. What a great storyline.
Well, Bane has gone, 24 hours of pure fighting.
Right.
You know, so again, it is a great comparison to what he did to Bruce, you know, all those years ago, where he ran him through the gauntlet, ran him through the ringer, and just took his body to a point where it should have failed. You know, and it's, you know, looking at this, you know, now, as when I was reading, oh, this is kind of cool, this is neat. When you start really breaking down what Bruce did what Bane did to him. He completely shifted around on him. It's a really cool just thought that Bruce would go that route with this.
I liked the dialogue on the fact that Batman's been in the final issue. Batman's been in so many life or death situations. Rest in peace, Batman. There's no escape, Batman. Time to die, Batman. This is how it ends, Batman. And yet I'm still here. I like that. You didn't die, did you? And just going through the storylines, Gotham and Gotham Girl, you saw them. You saw another possibility. And how Bruce was looking for that other possibility, but that it never pays off. You know, he's looking for that chance to step away, but he can't step away. And he needs to keep rising up from the ashes. I really liked that whole premise and how it paid off as a part of this final battle between these two from this round. Kind of re-examining the continuity so far up to this point from that perspective, I thought was something that was really interesting.
Yeah, and it's one of those cool moments where, because you see just the levels between these two, that they are on operating on equal levels, you know. And again, we said how Batman, you know, Batman will rely when his back's up against the wall to strategy. Bane goes to brute force and violence, and you're seeing just each one of them doing that epitome of what their backup plan always is. Bane's so super jacked up that he's swinging wildly, you know, and Bruce is taking a beating. He's delivering some blows, but it is ultimately just this ultimate, you know, final chess piece where he's looking for that strike. He's looking for that moment to go into it, you know, and he's looking for his opening. And I loved how, again, you know, throughout all this, you know, Bane is still Bane, but that the moment where he's talking about with, you know, the Catwoman, he's going at the Catwoman, the Commissioner, the Tiger, and then after that fun, I'll find where you've hidden your Robins. And I love the fact that he's, you know, Bane is not only just going to break Batman now, he is going to kill every single person that Batman knows and loves and cares about and protects. And for me, that was, again, a really just great moment inside this fight, because, you know, these two know each other so well that they can play off of each other. They can push each other's buttons. And it's like, man, this is awesome.
The battle was phenomenal because it really was this kind of yin and yang of just kind of how Batman has to keep rising up, how he has to keep going through tragedy and responsibility. And it is this desire to win the war. I love the bit where, you know, Bane does that whole bit, I am Bane. Yeah, I know. You're Bane. But I think you forgot. I'm Batman. And that bit where, Batman's down and out, at least looks like he's down and out, and he does that headbutt right to the bridge. And Bane goes down in that moment. And I just love the dialogue there. For a moment, he believed you were done. For a moment, he left himself vulnerable. And after that, Bane finally understood that though you fall, though you want to fall, though you need to fall, you are never done. You vowed to win a war. The girl was your way to win. And so you did all this, suffered all this for the possibility of victory. I just really loved that whole piece. One other thing I loved about this too, and I want to mention it because it'd be remiss. So often the stories focus on Thomas Wayne, and we've talked about this on the show recently. I know at least in the last year we've mentioned this once before. I really love that this story focused on the relationship with his mother, because I do think it's something that often stays in the background in Batman stories. Just because it's the son looking up to his dad. I'm glad that this storyline focused on the mom, because he's so driven by this relationship with his parents, right? That, drove him to become this person. And you can make an argument that at a certain point he transitioned, that his war became his drive, his city became his drive. And I believe those things are true. But you got to look back and say, why did this kid care so much? I love in these moments where they start fleshing out more the relationship with mom. This was really a great choice here, because I think it adds more legitimacy to why was this kid so driven by these parents. That was great. Really a great choice in this storyline. And I like the connecting threads of Bane and his mom. Really good stuff. Really smart choices in this storyline. And it makes this issue, when it ends, with this quaint moment with Bruce kind of reflecting on what his mom would say now and having this dialogue with her. I really loved that. You had this sense that he actually did know her enough in his mind to have that dialogue. That really was just an important issue, because it made Martha Wayne, to me, a three-dimensional character, when sometimes she's very two-dimensional, because they haven't really fleshed out that character enough. This storyline did a lot to make her a more fleshed out character for me.
A lot of times she gets put on the back burner, and it's always the father-son relationship. Yes. It's always, Thomas. And, and I'm agreeing 100% with what you're saying. I loved how this one was about the mom, and especially with, when you think back to when you're a little kid, you do look up to your father. You do revere your father, but mom is always that huge part of your life. Look at with both of us. Our mothers are huge parts of who we are, sure. And part of our life. And I love the fact that Bruce never let that go. That Bruce holds on to it. Part of the pledge isn't just I'm going to avenge, and make sure no one suffers, because of my dad died. No, it's the mom and the dad. That mother's that same crucial part. And I love the ending, where she flat out says, you don't need a good death for me to be proud of you. Yes, mother, I know. Because if you think back to how the whole Gotham and Gotham Girl story first came about, Bruce was talking about having a good death. And he's going down with the airplane. He's going to ride that thing down, and this was it. He had no other way to get around this. He couldn't get anybody else in time to save it. He knew, okay, I'm going to die. And you think back to how that played out when he's talking to Alfred on the phone. He's like, "There's messages for the boys. Tell them, and it was he was laying it out, saying, hey, we've got it all set up. Like they've got to continue the fight, continue, the mission and all that stuff. And Gotham's, they save him. They save Bruce. They save Batman from his death. And from that issue on, it's always been about the good death. And now, what I'm really wondering is what happens next. Well, we know with the story of the button, but the continuing on. Will we see a change in Bruce? Will we see a change in how he looks at life and how he looks at everything because of this? And that's something I'm really anticipating. The Button's a great story that I'm loving, but I'm wondering, in the Batman title itself, will this, continue on? Are we going to see, once again, another change or another evolution in Batman?
Aren't we seeing that, though, continually? I mean, this is more me agreeing with what you're saying. I don't think there's an are we. I think we are seeing it. I think we've been seeing it. I think this storyline is part of that evolution, and I think we've been seeing that. I think it's slow, and I think it's real time. I think we're witnessing it real time. It's not going to be like a rubber band where he snaps to the other side, but it is a lot of what you're talking about. Are we seeing an evolution of him? I think yes, but I think we're experiencing it with him versus kind of going, how did that happen? And I prefer it this way. So I think we're going on a journey with him, and I think the fact that, you touched on that part where he was looking for that, there was that good death piece. I like that this storyline ends with kind of an evolution of saying, well, maybe I don't need that. And I think isn't that part of evolution when you're thinking one way and you start to see other things. And I think this storyline explains why he was thinking that and what he was feeling then. And I really like that this made a lot of sense of why he was doing the things that he was doing, but why now he may react differently moving forward. He's a complicated fella. And to me, why is Bruce Wayne the guy that you want in the cowl? Because I've enjoyed the explorations when we've had other people under there. I enjoyed Asbats. I enjoyed seeing multiple times Dick Grayson under the cowl. I've enjoyed when we've seen Damian under the cowl. And obviously we had the other members of the Bat family under the cowl too during before Dick actually took over the mantle.
Yeah.
So I've enjoyed all of that when we've seen it. But in the end, what makes Bruce so interesting, it's that complexity. It's seeing this man gradually evolve over time. I think it's what makes him so malleable to different eras, right? This is the Batman of today. I enjoyed, when I was a kid growing up in the 70s, he was the globe-trotting, jet-setting. He had more of this open relationship with the police and that type of thing. And while we do have that to a certain extent now, it's different because our society's not as trusting as it was then. I like that. I like that this character is able to evolve probably more than any comic character to the changes in society and to be contemporary. Bruce is a contemporary. I mean, this is a very contemporary story right now going on with Bruce. He just works. Probably more than any comic character. Because Superman, I think they tried to make him more contemporary. And in the end, it was kind of like, listen, we got to get this dude back to who he was as fast as possible. And it worked. Superman shouldn't feel like that. Superman should almost feel like this ideal that we're striving for. Whereas Batman seems to be malleable to a certain extent. You've got to keep the basic tenets of what makes him, but this is a much more modern take on him than what I was reading in the 70s with him, yet it feels like, to me, that same guy. Like, you can tell me that this guy did all these things in the 70s and it would still work for me, that this is who he is today. And I love that about the character. I really do. This storyline just really stands out to me. I'm glad we had a chance to kind of do this cover to cover because of this. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, actually, one quick comment I was going to make. It's funny because my first time reading through, when I was, going through this, that ending where, the headbutt, and, I am Batman, sitting there, I was thinking, as I'm reading this, thinking, okay, now's the turnaround. Now we're going to have, multiple pages of him beating on Bane. And, I was expecting that was going to be, I wasn't expecting him to drop him with the headbutt. And I was sitting there going, wait a minute. Then as I'm reading it, okay, he left himself vulnerable, open him flat. Like, what? No, that's the end of the fight? Wait, come on. And I do admit it, when I first read it, I was like, I was expecting, this long, drawn-out battle, and it kind of threw me. And I was trying to get my hands around it. But the thing that, pulled me into it was the fact that it's that one moment, that one opening. And even, I think it was last issue or 2 issues ago when Bane was first planted, they showed the back, when they were showing the side-by-side, the Bruce and Batman, when Bane was first coming into Gotham talking about taking down the Bat. He's like, you just need to have that one moment. You just need to have that determination and that willpower. If you have more willpower, you win the fight. I'm like, oh, okay, they telegraphed what was going to happen right here. And again, just layering on what I thought was going to be one thing turned out to be something completely different. And I absolutely love the what actually I got as to what, I thought was going to happen. I completely just head over, just 100% think this is such a better layout, and an ending was just that one bam, that one hit. That's all it took, because, it's that one moment of who has the will more, who wants this fight more. Right there, this was about Batman wanting it more, and I love that.
Yeah. I like that he walked into this assuming this is his death.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that moment, and then you thought about Claire. Boom.
Yeah.
It's so great. Such a great Batman moment. And the nice part about this is, we're both wrestling fans. We talk about, whether or not somebody loses any steam because of an outcome of a match, or, the story being told there, right? And that happens from time to time, where sometimes they'll do puzzling things where, like, wow, you really diminished somebody in that.
Yeah.
There was no loser in this battle.
No. Bane is still just as dangerous as he ever was. The question is, where is he going to be kept? Because they've got him, but is there any prison that can hold him?
Well, we got a 12-issue series coming up, buddy, where we're going to be seeing where Bane goes from here.
Okay, so that's what I didn't know where. I know the Bane, story is coming up, and I think issue 1 came out this week, and I haven't had a chance to read it yet. But I didn't know if it was continuing on this or if this was another Bane story.
Do you want to add that to our button discussion, maybe? And
yeah, let's add that to the button.
Talk about the first issue?
Yeah.
Just because, I don't know, I think it's kind of fitting. Just because the button's going to be a 4-parter. Why don't we add that to our next episode and we'll talk about it, just because I'm very interested right now. So we'll add that as part of our second part of this too. We'll talk about the button, and then we'll just real quickly talk about that first Bane issue.
Sounds good.
There they are, all alone except for that old character.
I want to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434, or Dr. Norge on Skype. If you've called in previously and you get kind of this generic sort of message now, Skype changed how it works, in the sense that you're not able to leave personal messages anymore. So that is our voicemail line. Please leave us a message. We love having you part of the show. RagingBullets.com is our show website. That's where you're going to find news on the brand new episodes, when they're going to be coming out, when they're going to be released. Our next storyline is going to be taking a look at the Button crossover, but we tend to put a lot of that stuff as we're brainstorming right up on the website. That feeds into Twitter. It feeds into our Facebook fan page. We have a Facebook group community that we're a part of, and such a great group of people over there. Jeremy and the whole gang are constantly posting updates on comics, pop culture, video games. They talk about all of comics too, which is great. It's a DC-centric page, sure, but I like that the guys organically, whatever you want to talk about, and I love that. I love the free-for-all. They promote people's podcasts, blogs, things like that, and they do it in a way where they're promoting things that they're finding of value and of interest. But I go there before I go to any news sites, because they're already posting info up there. And notice I say they. It really is. I'm proud to be associated with it. We started it originally back when our forums shut down. Comic Geek Speak was kind enough for years to let us be a part of their forum community. And when they had to change their format and how they were doing forums, I had to take a look at whether or not we were going to join somebody else's forum group, start up our own, or just do a Facebook group. So I decided to do a Facebook group. Honestly, it started off as an outlet for our show. And I love that it evolved into something that really, it's the community there. It's martial law. They took it over. And thank you guys so much for making it what it is. It's your community. It's not ours. We're just proud to be associated with it. So thank you for all you do over there. I shout it out many times on the show, just because I'm proud to be associated with it because of the quality of the people that are there. And if you aren't normally in a Facebook group community because you feel they're intrusive, there are a lot of settings now that give you a lot of control over when you receive emails, how many emails you receive, if you receive emails at all. You can totally be stealth and just pop in and see what people are talking about. And I encourage you, if you're like, I kind of want to dip my toe in, do that. Sign up for the group, look in the settings, adjust it so that way it doesn't wind up being intrusive for you. And feel free to pop in and be a part of the discussion. It's such a safe group that allows people to come in with differing opinions. It's also not a snarky group. It's nobody's there that's negative for the sake of being negative. Debate will happen where people will talk about things that they dislike, but they do it in such a way where it's intelligent dialogue and commentary versus it just being everything sucks. I mean, it's and more often than not, it's celebration of what's great about comics. And I love that people aren't afraid to jump in and say, hey, a lot of people are saying they hate this, but I kind of dig it. And I like that. I enjoy, obviously, that matches a lot of my commentary. And I enjoy hearing people because their reasons a lot of time are very different than mine for enjoying something. And I quite enjoy that as well. So it's a great community, and I can't recommend it enough. But thank you for everyone who's a part of it. We have pages on Google+. I have a PlayStation Network account. It's Raging_Bullets. I also have a Nintendo account because I have a Switch. It's drnorge. I think the easiest way to get to it is on that Miitomo app. Certainly, if you want to email me, I'll give you some friend code or something like that. I'm not as familiar with Nintendo's system. I'm enjoying my Switch a great deal. I think it's a great console. Zelda's amazing, and I've got Mario Kart. Their whole way of adding people in your community is a little bit more complicated than the PlayStation Network, which makes it kind of simple. But I get it. They tend to kind of try to protect the kid audience. But feel free to add me. I love connecting with people who are on the show. And I am in that Miitomo app, so feel free to add me that way if you'd like to. But, Jim, we are, as always, sponsored by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Can you tell us what's going on over at DCBService.com?
Bundles, 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 bundles. DCBS is continuing 50% off of the different bundles that they're offering. Vertigo, Young Animals, just the various, DC packets as well. Check those out. Great deals. But also at 50% off, we have the Batman Rebirth Deluxe Collected Hardcover Edition, Book 1. This will have Batman Rebirth number 1 and Batman issues 1 through 15. Collected, beautiful hardcover, 50% off, only $17.49. Thank you, DCBS.
I want to shout out that Batman Nightfall Omnibus again over at InStockTrades.com. This one is 952 pages, just to clarify. It contains issues from Batman, Detective Comics, Batman Shadow of the Bat, Robin, Catwoman, Batman Legends of the Dark Knight, and more. And it's 952 pages, $99.99 regularly, 42% off, only $57.99. If you missed this, a hardcover collection of Nightfall for me is a dream come true. This is one of my favorite Batman storylines. I'm salivating for this one. I haven't gotten mine yet, but I'm excited to finally sit down, and I will reread it again in a hardcover format like this. What a great way to collect this as an omnibus. I'm assuming there's going to be 2 omnibus volumes in order to tell this whole storyline, but to get almost 1,000 pages in an omnibus of this storyline is just a great way to digest it. Thank you, DC, for providing this and InStockTrades.com. Go ahead, Jim.
It's funny you mentioned that you assume there's going to be Volume 2. Mm-hmm. Guess what also is being offered at DCBS this month? Batman Nightfall Omnibus Hardcover Volume 2.
Sweet.
50% off, $49.99. So there you go.
And that's a reason to pre-order it, too, to be able to get it at that kind of 50% off discount. So, yeah, I'm going to be jumping on that one for sure because I love these omnibuses. And I'm picking and choosing with the omnibuses. I'm not getting all those the same way I'm the absolutes, but more often than not, they're pulling me in. You know what I've got? I got the whole JSA series in omnibus. They did those in 3 volumes, and those are terrific.
Nice.
Yeah, these are nicely bound, high-quality paper. They're great hardcover volumes, and that's the part for me. Omnibuses used to be a thing where you get a lot of newsprint in between. Now you're getting like high-quality paper in there. It really is like getting the comic in an omnibus volume, and I really enjoy the way that they're collecting them. So thank you, DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for providing these. Jim, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show and partway through, we are going to be talking next episode about The Button, and we're also going to talk about the first issue of that Bane maxi series that's out. So we will see everyone next episode.
Bye!
On November 13th, Sean Whalen was asked to stop constantly talking about comic books. That request came from his wife. Deep down, he knew she was right, but he also knew that someday he would find someone that would talk to him. With nowhere else to go, he appeared at the home of his childhood friend Jim Segulin. Sometime earlier, Segulin's boss had requested that he shut up about his comic books and never speak of them again. Can two grown men put out a DC Comics podcast without driving each other crazy? It's Raging Bullets, the DC Comics fan podcast. With Sean Whalen as Dr. Norge, and Jim Seguin as the Sensei of the Whatnot and the Duke of You-Know. It's a spoiler podcast, so they will go in depth into the plot line, story twists, and whatnot of the comics they are reviewing. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you may better enjoy the show.